You just refinanced something. Maybe a car, maybe a kitchen you didn't need to redo, maybe a vacation you paid off over 6 months without really noticing. You told yourself it was earned. You worked hard. You deserved it. But somewhere, quietly, a person with far more money than you just bought a 10-year-old sedan and didn't think twice. This is the strange gap nobody talks about. Gen X came of age believing that success looks like something. A house that photographs well. A car in the driveway that says something about you before you say a word. A closet that proves the hustle paid off. And for decades, that belief felt like common sense. Work hard, then show it. But the actual wealthy, the ones with real balance sheets, rarely play that game. They dress like substitute teachers. They drive cars until the doors rattle. They live in the same house for 30 years. Why does the group with the least to prove spend the least on proving it? And why does the group carrying the most debt spend the most on looking like they don't have any?
To understand this, you have to go back to what Gen X actually inherited. Not money. Timing. Born roughly between 1965 and 1980, this generation grew up watching their parents lose pensions, watching companies stop being loyal to employees, watching stability quietly disappear. They learned early that nothing is guaranteed, so many of them built an identity around control. If the world wouldn't promise them security, they would at least look secure. Enter the credit card. Enter the leased SUV. Enter the mortgage stretched a little further than it should have been. Gen X came up in the exact window when consumer debt became not just available, but normalized, easy, even expected. A car payment wasn't a warning sign, it was just Tuesday. Here's where the psychology gets interesting. Economist Thorstein Veblen described this over a century ago with a term you've probably heard without knowing its origin: conspicuous consumption. Spending money not to enjoy something, but to be seen enjoying it. Veblen argued that once basic needs are met, a huge portion of spending shifts from utility to signal. You're not buying the car. You're buying what the car says about you, to your neighbor's opinion of you. Now, compare that to the actual wealthy. Researchers Thomas J. Stanley and William Danko spent years studying self-made millionaires for their landmark study on American wealth, and what they found broke almost every assumption people had. Most millionaires didn't drive luxury cars. Many bought used vehicles. Many lived in modest homes in modest neighborhoods, often the same one for decades. Their wealth wasn't visible. That was the entire point. It didn't need to be seen because it wasn't for anyone else. This is the split. Gen X, squeezed between shrinking job security and rising costs, often spent to feel stable. The truly wealthy spent to stay wealthy. One group used money to answer an emotional question. The other used money as a tool and nothing more. Think about what debt actually does to the brain. When you buy something you can't fully afford, there's a rush, a hit of relief and pleasure that arrives instantly. The bill arrives later. Behavioral economists have shown again and again that humans are wired to overweight present rewards and underweight future costs. It's not stupidity, it's architecture. Your brain evolved to survive today, not to optimize a 30-year mortgage. Now, add one more layer. Social comparison doesn't compare you to everyone. It compares you to whoever is nearby. Economist Robert Frank studied this closely and found that people don't measure their spending against the country, they measure it against their street, their coworkers, their group chat. If your neighbor renovates their kitchen, your kitchen suddenly looks old, even though nothing about your kitchen actually changed. The comparison shifted. The house didn't. This is why Gen X spending often clusters so tightly around visibility. Cars everyone can see, renovations everyone can walk through, vacations everyone can watch unfold in real time. It's not that this generation is uniquely materialistic. It's that they came up in the first wave of constant comparison, before it fully evolved into what it is now,
but close enough to feel its pull hard.
Meanwhile, the wealthy that Stanley and Danko studied often lived far from that comparison loop entirely. Many weren't trying to impress a neighborhood. They were building a number in an account that nobody else would ever see. Their satisfaction came from the balance, not the driveway. There's a harder truth underneath all of this. Looking rich and being rich are often opposites. Every dollar spent signaling wealth is a dollar that didn't go toward building it. The financial writer and researcher Juliet Schor documented this pattern in her work on American overspending, showing how a culture built on visible upgrading quietly drained savings across entire income brackets, not just the poor. Even solidly middle-class households were financing a lifestyle that looked wealthier than it was, simply to keep pace with a moving target that never stops moving. So why does it feel so hard to opt out? Because the signal works both ways. You're not just broadcasting status to others, you're also trying to convince yourself. If your identity got shaped by instability, spending becomes a way of narrating a different story to yourself. See? I made it. I'm fine. Look at what I have. The car isn't just for the driveway. It's for the version of you that needed proof.
But proof that requires a monthly payment isn't proof at all. It's rent on an image. Here's the twist that makes this even stranger. The wealthy aren't frugal because they lack desire. Many of them could buy almost anything they want. They choose not to, because status stopped being the goal a long time ago. Once you no longer need anyone's approval, spending to earn it becomes pointless. It's not restraint, it's indifference. And indifference, it turns out, is one of the most expensive things to obtain, because it usually only shows up after the money question has already been settled. This is the quiet cruelty of the whole system. The people who need to impress the least spend the least trying to. The people under the most financial pressure often spend the most trying to look like they aren't. Not because they're careless, because the pressure to appear fine is louder than the pressure to actually become fine. Look at what's sitting in your driveway, your closet, your last 3 purchases. Ask what each one was actually for. Was it useful, or was it a message? There's no shame in either answer, but knowing the difference is the first step towards spending like the money is yours, instead of spending like it's a performance for people who, statistically, are barely paying attention. Because that's the final irony. Most of the audience you're spending to impress isn't studying your choices the way you fear they are. They're busy worrying about their own driveway, their own closet, their own 6-month payment plan. Everyone is performing for a crowd that's actually looking at their own reflection. You didn't just refinance a car. You refinanced a story about who you are.
The real question was never whether you could afford the upgrade. It was whether you needed anyone else to see it.